Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of our Southern California housing market update for first-time home buyers. My name is Stephen Meade. I'm with Domicile Real Estate, where we are on a mission to help California's renters become homeowners. And, really a lot of the action in the housing market has been in the entry-level segments. I think for a lot of buyers, these are the buyers that are most affected by interest rates. These are the buyers really whose demand changes the most drastically. This is also where many of the condo buyers are coming from. And one of the things I want to mention kind of before we get into our normal stats is, just like everybody else, we review data from a lot of different sources, from information put out by the Federal Reserve, from information put out in various news publications, also to data that is released by the California Association of Realtors. I attended a presentation earlier today. They've hired a new economist earlier this year who's been kind of doing some sort of different data projections that I've kind of really enjoyed seeing that perspective on. And I wanted to kind of lay the background of this is what they are predicting, and then kind of talk a little bit about what we're seeing here on the ground. So their general prediction is that interest rates are going to crest at about the 6.5% mark. Historically, that's actually not that bad. Rates have frequently been in the sixes throughout modern history. They're thinking that that is they're going to settle plus or minus 0.5% from that number. Now, I'm going to give a caveat like I always do. Predicting interest rates is really guessing with maybe a little bit of extra information behind it. I think it's hard for anybody to predict where those rates are. I think as recently as earlier this year, people were predicting rates would hit 4% by the end of the year, and that would be it. Obviously, that is not what's happened, right? If you're a first-time buyer standing on the sidelines. The other big prediction that they had was pricing. And their prediction on pricing is that between 2022 and 2023, we're going to see pricing slip by about 7.5% or so. And that got me thinking about something, and we're going to jump into our first slide on how sometimes these statistics and these numbers can be very misleading between what they actually are and what you are thinking they are. So let's go ahead, let's jump in, and you can see what I'm talking about. And if you're a first-time home buyer, right, nothing is scarier than somebody telling you, I think, house prices could crash 25% or something like that. So here we have a graph. You've all seen this graph before. It looks back pretty much more or less 2018, 2019, and then over the last year. And this is first quartile prices for our entry-level single-family home, which is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and our entry-level condo, which is a 2-bedroom, 2-bath in Los Angeles and Orange County. So this is meant to approximate that entry-level end of the market, which is what most first-time or entry-level buyers are looking at. And if you look at this chart, right, you can see we kind of went through all through 2021 with maybe moderate growth, if any, and then we jumped into 2022. Things kind of shot up, and you see obviously there's some ups and downs and things, but we had a couple peak numbers here in that 825 range. And what I want people to understand though is, if I told you home prices were 825 and now our new median is 750, right? That on paper is almost a 10% drop. And technically, mathematically, that's an accurate statement to say, but it's also a little bit misleading. And the reason why it's a little bit misleading is if you look on this chart, the period of time that homes were in this 850, 825 range or so was maybe a month or so. It was not a long period of time, right? And things quickly shot down from that peak. We were kind of back into the low 8s and the high 7s. And so mathematically, you could say we have dropped 10% from our peak, but I don't know if that's really a very representative figure for understanding what's kind of happening in the market. This economist used the term moderation in pricing. That sounds a little bit like a euphemism, but I think it's pretty accurate in this case. If you look at our most recent week of data, and again, you can't go by one kind of data set here, but you'll notice that our median in both our condos and our entry-level single family shot up a good amount. now we're right back around that 750, number here. So maybe a little bit less, maybe 725, something like that, 735. And excuse me, let me grab some water. Obviously, I'm very curious to see what's going to happen next week, right? Because remember, this data is 4 to 6 weeks old. This is telling us where the market was. It's not telling us where the market is. So this data does not incorporate the latest rounds of mortgage interest rate increases. Speaking of which, this data does incorporate that. So if we look at our total monthly payment based on a 30-year fix with 5% down, including mortgage insurance, taxes, everything, what do we see? Well, guess what? We see these payment numbers starting to climb back up. We're not hitting our peak, but we're kind of in this zone that we've seen up here, this zone that's somewhere in that kind of mid $5,000 range for our entry-level single-family home, and this kind of, $4,300, $4,400 range in our condos. So what you're seeing here is the result of recent interest rate increases in the mortgage markets. We look at our minimum household income. We're right here around $126,000 for our entry-level single-family home and $107,000 for our entry-level condo. If we look at our absorption rate, this one's kind of fascinating. I think I cautioned you last time when I mentioned we were in the week leading up to a holiday weekend, which means that homes still get bought, but nobody puts homes on the market. Well, now we're seeing the flip side of those numbers, right? Because what happens after the holiday weekend? Well, the buying rate is largely the same, but all those people waited to put their homes onto the market. What do? They rushed to put those homes on the market. And so we saw these absorption rates drop to 76% for our entry-level single-family home and 66% for our condos. Realistically, I think the number is somewhere between where we were last week. I think it's kind of in that healthy 70s range for both of these. Total inventory. This one is a little fascinating to me. So you saw we crested here, and then inventory started to drop pretty sharply, but now we've got 2 weeks in a row where it's really been flat, just holding at this level, which is admittedly quite a bit higher than we were last week. It's not rising inventory, but it's really just staying steady. I would have thought it would have started dropping a bit more. We're just going to have to watch the market. As you see, if you look last year, if we're talking about seasonality, what you can see is that, we had some drops starting in the fall, but really those drops accelerated as we went into October and November. November, December are the months where inventory drops to its minimal point and then it starts rebuilding. So I'm very curious to see what happens with inventory this year. Does it drop like it normally does, or does it hold steady? I think that's going to tell us a lot about what our spring is going to look like. If we look at our 14-day still active percentage, that number actually has slid downward. What does that mean? Well, if our inventory stayed the same, but our 14-day percent still active has dropped a little bit, what that means is that buyers are actually going after that newer inventory more than the older inventory that's been sitting. And then if we look at our week's supply of homes, again, we have fairly steady numbers here, right? Like we keep kind of bouncing between 8 and 10 weeks on condos, and we're right here at 8 weeks of relative inventory on our entry-level single-family homes. Believe it or not, despite the interest rates, despite everything else, this is a fairly steady market. And I'm almost fascinated by how stable this market wants to be, despite a lot of the variables changing around us. Excuse me. So that's kind of the gist of what's going on out there. Do I think the California Association of Realtors prediction of about a 7.5% decline between 2022 and 2023 is going to come to pass? I think it's as good as a guess of any. But again, a lot of this, as I said, depends on how you're measuring this. If you're measuring this from a peak number in 2022, technically on paper, we have dropped that 10%, right? Like it's happened already. But when that peak was a number that only existed for 3 weeks, is that really a high point in the market, or was that just an anomaly? And please excuse my absolutely terrible air drawing here. But, we all expect that property prices go like this, generally crest and go like this. But the reality is, when you look at these, what they really do is this: they come up and they oftentimes will hit a little peak like this and then immediately come down. At that point, that peak is usually fairly small and fairly sharp to some degree. And that's actually what we've seen in this market as well. Anyhow, questions, comments, we love them. Don't be shy about it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you hear about all of our interesting videos that we have coming out. And finally, if you would like to schedule a 15-minute, no cost, no obligation consultation with us, there is a link down below to do that. We work in Southern California, mostly in Orange and Los Angeles counties. If you would like to become a homeowner, or if you would like to have a plan to become a homeowner, even if you don't know when that is going to happen, absolutely reach out to us. We would love to chat with you, and we will see you again real soon.